We're back for another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. This episode, we welcome back Paul Eaton, owner and retailer of Galactic Comics and Collectibles in Bangor, Maine. Back for our movie review segment. We're actually moving this into an actual episode now. No more bonus episodes for these movie reviews. They come into a numbered episode. Big thing to me, doesn't matter to a lot of other people. But on this episode, we talked the 2005 Marvel movie Man-Thing, a movie little known to a lot of people out there, but it's available on Tubi and Amazon Prime Video and so many more places, available on DVD as well. But this movie came out in 2005, starring the Marvel comic book character Man-Thing. So Paul and I discussed this movie, reviewed it a little bit, discussed the movies in general in the Marvel world, and how this fit into it, and so much more. But before you get started, review, rate, subscribe on Spotify and Apple, as well as all major podcasting platforms. And visit us on its Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Please follow us all on there for updated information and so much more. And you can visit capesandtights.com for a bunch more information, reviews, opinions, features, and so much more. This is the movie review featuring Paul Eaton of Galactic Comics and Collectibles in Bangor, Maine, talking Man-Thing from 2005. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, Paul Eaton of Galactic Comics and Collectibles on Hammond Street in Bangor, Maine.
Hey, good morning, Justin.
Morning. Long time no see. I feel like I saw way too much of you this weekend.
Yeah, really, right? I was gonna say you must be really like slumping now because you've had amazing guests, and now it's like, and we'll get Paul on again.
We need a fill-in. You know, someone canceled, and
you can't do like real famous people every week, right?
Well, I mean, after this weekend, I mean, this is not going to air for a little, like, because we did some changing. This is an actual episode of the podcast now instead of a bonus episode. You've been promoted to the big leagues here on the podcast. But this past weekend, Paul and I welcomed Daniel, New York Times bestselling author Daniel Kraus, to our hometown, our Bangor, Maine, a place where we live. And so we're pretty happy. We were a little bit worn out, a little bit it was a lot to do.
It was a busy weekend. I mean, you had more in part of it than I did, but still, that was a busy weekend. That was a lot going on.
My wife and I, Taylor and I, we talked about that we're going to hopefully do some more of these things in the future. And I did say, though, like, they're going to incorporate the Briar Patch, and they're going to incorporate you, and they're going to, some will be just you, and some will be just the Briar Patch, and some will be some other random thing or whatever. But I am going to stop being, if it should get done, I'll just do it myself kind of person. Because I'm like, I could have, like, on Friday, for an example, I could have been like, Paul, you have an opportunity to pick him up at the airport, or, you know, you have a possibility that after we're done dinner, like, I was leaving, can you bring him back to the airport? I'm going to go home this time. Those kind of things we could work on for next time.
No, you definitely, you were doing everything, like all of it, and now you definitely need to break that up. That's a lot on your plate.
It was fun, but it was like we got talking in the car so much. We talked so much in the car that when we got to the actual things where you were supposed to talk, I'm like, I don't have anything to ask you anymore. Or like when we sat down at lunch, I'm like, I just asked you all the questions I wanted to know in the car on the way here. So I guess I'll just eat. No, it was great. It was a great opportunity. Yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I loved how I would say that there was a similar amount of people at both events, but it was just like yours were like flowing in. And whereas the Briar Patch, the book signing and discussion was more, the people just sat there and then signed and left. So it was a little bit of a different vibe, and I like that. I like that ability for people to just stop in, get a signature, and leave, and then the ability for someone who really wants to sit down and have a conversation.
What's funny is I think it'd be cool someday to do a structured signing with a comic creator like that, where we can do like a comic Q&A panel and a meet and greet and the signing and have all that. But at the same time, I love our vibe that people can come in and chat. And like we had our first guests of the morning that chatted and then stepped aside and let people in and get all their stuff done. And then just, wanted to kind of continue a conversation with Daniel. And I thought that was great. And I like that easygoing flow. But I think someday it would be fun, too, to do a more structured event around it. And I don't know, have that Q&A possibility with a creator that you might not always get around here.
Yes, exactly. We had that space, the book space. If you're in the Bangor, Maine area, book space is a great space where Jerron and the crew over at the Briar Patch has authors and creators come in and do discussions and sign books and sign different things and so on. That could be a kind of opportunity at a place like that where we do one event and you have a little pop-up shop. They have a little pop-up shop so you can sell the books to the people that are going to be there. And then there's one question and answer that involves the comic book aspect and the book aspect. So people could everybody asked books at this book signing because it was Whalefall, Daniel's newest book. But he also has released the Autumnal and Trojan and Year Zero and all these other comics. But no one asked any questions about that really because of the fact that it was a book signing. And so maybe that could be a thing where we morph into it. Honestly, they mentioned about doing a reading. If you have a trade paperback out, how long would it take someone to read a trade paperback? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it based on the
half
person
an hour.
We know one person that can't seem to finish them for book club, but
my thought process is if you had Daniel sat down and read Trojan from start to finish, I bet, and he's read it's his book, so he knows it, and so on and so forth. If people wanted to follow along, or they just want to listen, or maybe it's up on a projection screen of the actual images from the book, and he's reading along and reads the book with us, or a segment, or one of reads book one of the 5-issue series. I don't know, something along those lines would be kind of cool too. I've never seen that be done, so we'll figure some cool things out.
Experience. Absolutely. It was funny because we sold out of, and I'm going to butcher it again, Autumnal. Okay, Autumnal. One of these days I will pronounce this properly. But we sold out of that book before Daniel got here, and then I didn't see anyone who bought it bring it to get signed.
Yeah.
It was funny that the attraction and interest around him coming was there, and then so many people grabbed the books but didn't get a signed copy. So that was kind of interesting. I expected to see those particular people back in.
The cover was, I think, sold it a little bit too. If anybody's ever read the Autumnal over at Vault Comics by Daniel Krause, and actually House of Slaughter's own Chris Sheehan, they are the artist on that book as well. The fun thing about that is that book's issue 8 is the trade paperback's main cover, which is pretty cool. You don't see that often, honestly. You see either issue 1, a variant cover, or just a random cover as the trade paperback cover. This one, it was the final issue was the thing. And it was a very,
I think they made the right call because that cover drags you in and it gives you that
there with the leaves and the snakes. Oh God, it's great.
Actually, that book goes well into what we're discussing today with the person in the swamp coming out of them.
So that was fun. So it was cool. If you do have the opportunity, you're in the Greater Bangor area or even in Maine, and you want something, Galactic Comics and Collectibles on Hammond Street, Bangor, Maine, has some book plated signed copies of some things at the store. You can swing by at some point, potentially. I mean, obviously this is gonna be mid-September before this actually airs, so at this point you should be able to stop by and grab something that's already bagged, boarded, and it has this in it. And we can also work on, if you have a book that you want a book plate from Daniel and you missed the opportunity because something came up, let us know, because we can either get one from Galactic or we'll get one mailed from Daniel. He'll be willing to do that too. So that's fun, and we'll do more of these in the future. Like I said, we have talks about some more local people coming in to the shop at some point in maybe the fall. I would love to do one maybe in the winter. Some more we could do extremely local, so that if it snows, it's not like you're traveling from
not the end of the world.
But something like that. So we'll figure that out. It'll be fun. So those will be obviously brought to you by Capes and Tights and Galactic Comics, and wherever we do them. I guess that we could do them at OBC or a brewing company. We could do them at the shop. We could do them at wherever makes sense. I think the shop makes the most sense, so you can sell some books. But I mean, my question, I guess, before we get into this movie review is, do you think though, if you had a shop set up at say Briar Patch set up their books, that many people who came in to get the book signed from Daniel bought something other than something by Daniel that day? It seemed like it was probably not as much. And so if you did bring up a signing and just had a table set up with just the stuff from that creator or creator adjacent, meaning that other horror books for a horror author or something like that, you probably would do just as well in that 2 or 3 hour span as you would do. You might even do better than the shop would do, especially if Rabbit's there. Jeez.
Poor Rabbit.
The Rabbit under the bus right there. It's the first time on this episode of the podcast. I'm sure there'll be more.
Probably won't be the last.
But we're here to talk Man-Thing, the 2005 Marvel Presents Man-Thing. So,
boy, I was shocked when the movie started with that Marvel opening.
Yeah.
Like your standard Marvel opening. And I was like, oh wow. So we were like really, because it's a Lionsgate film, which isn't traditionally tied to Marvel. What they had the Blade stuff, but now help me out. Did Blade start with that Marvel beginning? Didn't,
I
right?
believe so. I don't know. That was so. This Blade was 98. So that's the other difference. Is like that was 7 years prior. So we had 2000 was the X-Men, and then so from that point on there was Daredevil, all that stuff. So right in that time frame was the transitioning to the fact that Marvel was making some more movies, that didn't feature like the Incredible Hulk or Spider-Man, like animated stuff and stuff like that. So like this is more like getting into those. But it's so funny to think about how successful something like Iron Man was, which is really honestly until the movie came out was kind of a side character for a lot of people. Like a lot of people really didn't care that much about the actual character Iron Man.
Well, look at Sony not taking it. Like they could have just said Iron Man. They could have had the rights to everything, and they were like, we don't want all this.
But the first couple of movies that Marvel makes that like puts a lot of money and effort into are like movies like Blade and movies like Daredevil and I mean, this Man Thing out of all the movies. And I think it's because it's comic book related, meaning that it's not like superheroes. I think it's one of those things. Same with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. When we talked Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it wasn't like superhero related. It was like espionage and war and all that stuff that it wasn't actually talking about someone with a special suit on that's trying to save the day. This is more.
It has
this movie,
more standalone base too. You don't have to mention Spider-Man in it or the X-Men in it or anything else. They can just be there alone, which they didn't, and not have anything. Yeah, it has no tie-in to anything at all.
If you walked into this movie late, so like you're sitting down, you're on the couch, you're about to watch this movie, and they come in with the first, like they're like in the swamp area of Louisiana, you would never even know this was a Marvel movie. Like honestly, no one says the words Man Thing in the movie. No one says anything about Marvel. No one says anything about the Marvel universe or anything like that. It's literally just the fact that I honestly think it was some sort of money grab for Lionsgate to be like, oh, we can use this Marvel characters. It's Marvel adjacent. We can put the Marvel logo on it and so on. So, but let's just read a little bit about it. So when a greedy oil baron sets his sights on a drilling place in the Louisiana swamp, a monstrous creature is awakened. The baron and his associates are killed in the swamp thicket, spring on investigation led by Sheriff Kyle Williams. Although the Seminoles are initially suspected of the murders, the swamp creature known as Man Thing is the killer. A gruesome, they give away the ending. I mean, the killer is the Man Thing. Right there. A gruesome creature made of plants, vines. Man Thing possesses strange and dangerous powers. So, Man Thing was created by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Gary Conway, and Gray Morrow in 1971 for Savage Tales #1 at Marvel Comics. So this movie is technically based on the character Man Thing. I'll tell you right now, people, anybody listening to this, there is no connection to like any of the original story of Man Thing. This is like its own standalone thing.
I feel like I was getting, because I'm not the biggest Swamp Thing fan. Like a lot of people love Swamp Thing. And I was getting a little like mixed vibe and I'm like mixing the Swamp Thing, Man Thing origins together. So I went back and reread the Man Thing origin. I'm like, okay, all right, we're here. But then I was like, there's characters in this movie that look very similar to figures from the Swamp Thing cartoon series. Yeah. So I felt like I had like combining the DC Marvel universe, and I had to go re-look at all of it. But yeah, this has next to no relation to the Marvel origin at all.
And it was released in 2005, like we mentioned. So it was like 3 years prior to Iron Man, which like kicked off the world of like actual, like obviously we love and respect the X-Men films of the early 2000s, but like everybody knows that like 2008 when Iron Man came out for at least Marvel movies was like the beginning of the beginning. And obviously we have the Dark Knight and Batman Begins and all that stuff over at DC for the newer DC stuff, but really like the 80s Batman, 1989 Batman really kicked off that, and then there was a gap between
it was a long gap. The 89 Batman, I think, like got generations brought into the DC universe, but then they just kind of stopped. They just dropped it there, which was you got to figure a bad plan on their side, like bad planning, some sort of failure, who knows. But I
mean, the movie was made for $5.5. They said about $5.5 or $5.5 to $7.5 million on, on calculations of what the budget was, which is the out of the movies we've watched so far, kind of in this like realm of these weird, obscure,
Yeah,
not so great movies,
yeah.
is the Fantastic Four movie made for $1 million. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure Agents of Shield was made for way too much money. That was like, didn't we say it was like 10 million or 6 million?
I that had to mostly go to David Hasselhoff being casted, I would think.
Yeah.
I would think a good portion. I mean, what do you think that is? Like $3 million probably to have David Hasselhoff in that
I
in that
don't know,
movie.
honestly, at that time.
Maybe more. Especially with this like idea, their goal was to make that an ongoing series, and I'm sure you had to have some contract extension stuff in there to bring them on if it had gotten picked up. So I would feel like most of that budget went really to him,
and I would give this
more
so
so
this
than
is
the rest of it.
roughly around the same cost. So the estimated production value or budget of Agents of Shield was $6 million. This is 5.5 or $5 to $7.5 million. So it's in that $6 million range.
Do you think most of this budget was like CGI?
I don't know location. I mean, the more of a location settings. There's more because it was actually filmed in Australia. So I'm wondering
how much of this, watching this movie, how much of it was location and how much of it was like built prop in a swimming pool? Because there's a lot of times they're like waist high in water, going around, and there's all this like moss and stuff, and it's dark, so you don't really ever see beyond the space they're in. So like watching it, I was wondering how much of this was just filmed in a warehouse and they made this swampy
main thing was shot completely on location in Sydney, Australia. Locations included Wiseman's Ferry, Serenity Cove, at Kunos for exterior swamp scenes, and Homebush Bay. The initial budget and plot was altered from Man versus Nature. Wow,
that's gonna have a decent budget hike just to get everybody to Australia. Like that's not gonna be cheap to film there.
But I guess my thought is it's 7 years difference. So this $6 million seemed to have gone further in a sense. Like the $6 million in this movie looked better than $6 million in Agents of Shield. I think their difference was like Agents of Shield was kind of made as a backdoor pilot, whereas this was made as a feature film. And so like the idea was to put this into theaters, and $6 million for kind of a movie like this that's gonna, I mean, they were probably hoping to make $30 or $40 million. They weren't hoping to make the billions of dollars like they make in current movies.
Right.
I mean, they were hoping to make some more, but obviously after Avi Arad, who is the former chief creative officer of Marvel Entertainment, and he was the former chairman and CEO and founder of Marvel Studios, who was then eventually replaced by Kevin Feige in the theaters. He was in charge of this movie in a sense, but one of the things he said after seeing it was like, oh God, I wish I was there more because this is not what I want. And that's when it was basically sold as a sci-fi original to the Sci Fi Channel in 2005. And that's why it only made $1 million in the box office, because it was released in like Russia and a couple other international theaters where they probably make a few dollars and made $1 million back. I'm sure Sci-Fi didn't pay $5 million for it, so this obviously was a loss for the Marvel company. But it was on Sci-Fi, which also leads me to believe that we saw when we watched this the non-Sci-Fi version of it, because there was nudity.
Nudity is very graphic.
Yeah, so I'm guessing there's a made for TV version of this that's not what
they must have edited quite a bit of it. Yeah,
because we watched the DVD version of it, so that's possible that like the international theaters saw the actual cut back for Sci-Fi Channel, and then when they put it on DVD, they're like, well, might as well put it out there as R-rated and put the full thing in there. So I believe it's R-rated. I would think it's R-rated, right? I guess you'd have to, right? There's nudity. That's one thing.
I think it has to be. Yeah.
It doesn't actually say on IMDb or on Wikipedia.
I didn't see. So this is also for those listening, if they want to watch this and follow along. It is on Tubi as well.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it was on there, and I think it's the full regular edition as well.
And I think Amazon, you can buy it for Amazon too, as well. On Amazon streaming, you can buy it there.
So at least this is one that people can find.
Actually find, yeah. The actual funny thing about it is,
don't know that you should watch it, but you can find it.
It's not high rated. So 4 out of 10 on IMDb is actually, for this movie, like, is actually pretty high in my opinion. Like it's not
the 36% I saw on Rotten Tomatoes seems more accurate.
They're
that
both
makes sense.
But I mean, they're actually the review. I think the user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes is like 14%. Honestly.
Oh really? Oh wow.
Yeah.
If you're a Marvel fan, I don't see you liking this And it's certainly if you're a Man-Thing fan, you probably are not going to like this.
No.
Besides at least saying, hey, he
It's a
got
Man-Thing movie.
a minute on the screen.
Mhm.
Like he is there.
But I think that's part of the whole allure. You mentioned the minute thing, and I actually put it in my notes, was the actual benefit to me. If we went into this watching this as a Marvel, we're talking comics usually on this podcast, and we went into this as a Marvel movie, and that's the reason why I made the list to watch. However, I went into it afterwards, after seeing the Marvel logo and doing all that stuff, and seeing okay, we're into this movie. Then I'm just watching it as a typical, okay, now we're watching this $6 million horror movie. And the idea that they didn't show the whole first act, basically the actual Man-Thing, was probably a budgetary reasons. I mean, that's probably the first thing was okay, we don't show it on screen. We don't have to actually pay to get it made. And the second thing would be it adds that suspense of what is this creature? What does this creature look like? And the actual poster, the movie poster, doesn't have as much as it does as the DVD has a more of a picture of the actual Man-Thing on it.
Solid photo of him, yeah.
The poster has more eerie.
I would have liked to have seen more of the red eyes. I feel like that's a Man-Thing. And talk about an inexpensive, easy, even if it was just not in the killing scenes and this and that, if it was just throughout the movie somewhere, you can see him in the background glowing, over the sheriff's shoulders and then fade away and stuff like that. I would have liked to have seen that. I think that would have been a bonus to this. And by the time I got, I don't know, 20 minutes into it, I'm like, all right, it's time to give up on this having a Marvel movie, Marvel comic. I'm just watching a cheesy horror movie. If you're a cheesy horror movie fan, then this is probably for you. You might like it.
It met the checklist. It met the checklist of a cheesy horror film too. It has gore. Everything. It has gore. Yep. It has boobs.
Yep.
It has eeriness, all that stuff. All the requirements for a cheesy horror movie are here. That didn't need to be there. Did she need to be topless?
The weird filming scenes of it's daytime, but it's hazy.
Yeah.
All of these yellowish gray tones that are supposed to be ominous, I guess. I don't know. It just was weird. No, those didn't need to be there. And the first thing I thought is, you guys are gonna go out in a swamp in a canoe in the middle of the night. You're gonna get chewed alive by bugs.
Listen, she really wanted it. I will tell you this. I don't normally say that, but she was the aggressor on this. She was the one that wanted to go out there and do this.
Go out there, yeah.
And it was just kind of because if anybody's, we're not going to give away too much of the movie, but that's the first 5 minutes of the movie. So I feel like you never can spoil the first 5 minutes of a movie because by the time you sit down and eat your popcorn, you're already there. But the first 5 minutes of the movie, the idea is that they're on this swamp thing, and this seems to be what they were trying to say, high school student, but more maybe graduated high school and going into college. I couldn't really.
Well, I figured because the guy was the guy looked like he worked for the oil.
Yes,
rig.
so
he
so
might
it's
have been
probably
fresh out of school working for. So I'm thinking they were
18, 19,
post high school, college, 19, 20-year-olds getting their first jobs out there partying in the swamp.
And so she takes him into this canoe.
Yeah,
and she starts fooling around with him, whatever, and he's scared. He's saying there's something out here. I hear something.
Go out there.
No, and then also out of nowhere, you just see her start screaming, and she's topless, and blood starts covering her boobs.
Everywhere.
You're like, okay, what? And so I was thinking to myself, and I was like, actually, we had this discussion in the comic book store. I'm like, this is the first nudity in a Marvel movie. This is amazing. It's it's a step they made years ago. You didn't think about this, but when Star-Lord dropped the F-bomb in Guardians 3 was the first F word in a Marvel movie.
Right.
However, I thought back on it. This is not the first nudity. This is the first human nudity in a Marvel movie, because the first nudity in a Marvel movie was Howard the Duck back in 1986.
That's true.
Duck boobs. So this is the second Marvel movie with actual nudity. Possibly the weirdest
scene of any Marvel movie
again,
ever. I don't think it can be beat.
Again, unnecessary. Unnecessary.
Howard the Duck and this actually sort of go well together. And for comic fans, Howard the Duck's first appearance was a Fear Itself comic featuring Man-Thing. That was how we get Howard the Duck. So the two of them could go together. They should make a blended movie of it. And now
anybody who is a Man-Thing fan has been able to, fix this history by making Werewolf by Night, which features the Man-Thing.
That was great. And Man-Thing in the Werewolf by Night was great. Loved it. This was weird. It was weird.
So yeah, so it was a horror movie that was like wearing a mask of trying to be a Marvel movie, in the idea that I honestly think when I wrote down my note, it just looks like someone was trying to use the Marvel name to sell a movie. And it's as simple as that. It was like, we're gonna make a horror movie. Let's add the Marvel name to it, so people who are Marvel fans will be a fan of this. But like, actually, now thinking back on it, did Marvel have that much clout to even make it? Like nowadays, if you just slap the Marvel movie,
probably.
If you put out freaking, I don't know, if you put Blue Beetle out and put a Marvel logo on it, people would potentially go see it more. Yeah. Whereas back then it might not actually have, but what was 2005 was right after freaking Daredevil. So it's not even like it was, I guess, right after all the X-Men movies. I mean, the X-Men movies were coming out. So maybe that would do it.
Theaters and saw. Yeah, so maybe they thought, but it's weird because this movie, and like we said, it has no real, actual, authentic comic stuff in it, and is definitely like, we wanted to make a cheesy horror movie and slap this Marvel title on it. It just doesn't vibe. It doesn't feel like a superhero movie at all.
I can see how they
I'm not a huge horror fan, so I don't know as far as as horror movies go where this would stand up in your hokey horror movie enjoyment. It's a B horror movie.
It's definitely better than some horror movies I've seen. Like this actually potentially, I should look back what I actually rated it. I gave it a rating, my own star rating on it so far, I believe. Review. No, I didn't on there.
It's almost like you need to review it as both your Marvel cinematic style stuff and then just a crappy horror movie.
Mm-hmm. I was looking up, Paul, when you were talking there, I'll give it, this is like, excuse me, kind of spoiling it towards the end, is I did give it a full star. So I have the ability to do, I usually do half star. Like half star is your lowest you can get, and then full star, and then up to 5 stars. And so I give it a full star, and that's basically because in a sense of a 2005 $6 million or low budget, I should say, horror movie, it wasn't in the horrendous sides of things. Like I honestly think there's a large gap between a half star and a single star, which sounds so weird. But like half star is like, if I could give a half star, it means that I can't give a 0 star. You know what I mean? Like that's where it is. The 1 star says, okay, it gives there's something there. There's something worth watching. It is worth looking at. There's this horror aspect of it. Their acting is not like absolutely atrocious. There's moments of it. The fighting scenes were horrible.
It's not great. The acting's not great.
Practical effects. So I have it listed on my thing that the practical effects were actually not horrendous. Like Man-Thing's suit, and if it was by itself without its tentacle things and vines behind it and the red eyes, like I don't understand why the practical suit didn't just have red lights for eyes. Like it's a practical suit.
I think it would have looked better if it had.
Yes, because you can see when the Man-Thing moves, you see that the special effects don't line up very perfectly. So it almost looks like someone put like a transparency film over the front of your screen and is trying to move it with the thing.
And the funny thing was, I thought they gave it an insect vibe, and like kind of like The Fly. And then when they showed from Man-Thing's perspective, it kind of had that Fly vibe, stuff moving funky, this and that. So I don't know. I think the glowing red eyes, if you just had practical, probably would have looked better. But I didn't honestly think that was horrible. I think the tentacles were a bit much sometimes.
If you look back
I
on,
would have rather seen this giant swampy.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back on movies made in 2005 with graphics from 2005, we obviously see it with hindsight 2020 being that like we're seeing current special effects and we're judging older special effects.
Well, yeah, that's when I look at the CGI from that era and stuff. This didn't look horrible. It didn't look that bad, especially for a low budget. It really doesn't look that bad.
And they didn't use it as much. They only used it, like I said, specifically for like when Man-Thing was there. Like there didn't really need to be much special effects outside of Man-Thing. Like there's other stuff that's there that's like
forming.
Yep. And the practical effects
and the tentacles and stuff. My first thought is so much of this time you have the cheesy horror vibe there of like, oh, I know. Let's go to the middle of the swamp at midnight tonight. That's when we'll catch the bad guys. Like, here's an idea. Don't go to the fucking middle of nowhere at midnight, folks. Like, and I'm like, they're trudging through this water constantly. That's like knee high, crotch high, waist high. You're gonna die from snakes and alligators way before Man-Thing's ever gonna kill you, anyways. Like there is so much weird crap in that thing, and they have no idea where they're going. This guy's like not from there, and he's wandering around the swamp aimlessly. Like he's gonna trip on a root and drown, and movie's over. Like we don't have to.
Well, that's
We're done.
so like so the group that lives on the swamp, you know, your what do they call they call them the Seminoles, like they live out in the swamp. Those people live there, so them walking around in the swamps and doing all that stuff doesn't surprise me at all. It's the guy is literally the main character, Sheriff Kyle Williams, is not from Louisiana. He purposely had himself transferred to a new spot for a new beginning, and that's the people who didn't, like it's you and I. If you and I just got transplanted down to Louisiana, you couldn't catch me waiting around in the swamp in the day, let alone at middle of the night when there's like you're searching for something, killing something out in the, like they knew something was killing something, let alone be a creature or a human or anybody. It's something killing someone. That are
grotesquely destroyed, and you're gonna be like, well, you know what? I think I'm gonna wait until 10:30 or so tonight, then I'll head out. You know, all day I'm gonna sit in the office and do paperwork. Like, what the hell is he doing all day? And then night comes. All right, now we'll head out.
Let's go out. And that's the thing. Yeah. That's the horror movie trope, and that's the whole thing. That like you got to put yourself in stupid situations. Hey, I hear something in the other room. It's dark out. I'm not going to go outside and call the police. I'm going to go and investigate that room topless. You know, that's the horror movie thing. It's the horror movie. Yeah. Let me take my shirt off so I can go there. And if there is something scary in there, at least they'll get a show. No, like this is not like this is how horror movies work, which honestly is not a bad thing. But like I said, they use this Marvel name and put Man-Thing in the movie for some weird reason. Like literally, Avi Arad could have been like, okay, let's remove the Man-Thing. Let's put in some other sort of swamp creature. Let's take the Marvel name off of it. We'll just sell the rights to Lionsgate and it never exists as a Man-Thing movie. And it wouldn't have to change much. They literally have to change the scenes that Man-Thing's in, which is like, what, 3-4 scenes? Like, it's not much you have to change.
Realistically, they don't even have to change that much of that because he doesn't specifically look like Man-Thing.
Like a swamp creature.
Yeah, it's just a big swamp creature. They call him Man-Thing for the Marvel use. He has like I feel like the hands are Man-Thing looking. But in the red eyes, but the face doesn't really, what you see of the face ever doesn't really look like Man-Thing. Because he always has, Man-Thing has that weird, like, bulbous nose thing, Squidward rock in there, and you don't ever really see that. So, realistically, we just call this the swamp creature or whatever the hell you want to call it. And there you go.
And it's like, oh, we made a movie, you guys can have it. Because honestly, if they were to just given it to someone, they would have lost just as much money as they did if they just made whatever movie. It's like it's not like. And so the reason why I looked up while we were talking and discussing this about the idea that they're using the Marvel name and did it have much clout. So Blade, this is all stuff that was actually executive produced or produced by Avi Arad.
The funny thing is, most people didn't know Blade was a Marvel character. There are still people now in comic world that don't know that Blade is a Marvel character.
But so there was Blade, then X-Men. There was 98 and 2000, and then X-Men or Blade 2 came out in 2002 as well as Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man. So you did have the Spider-Man movies with the and the
which
X-Men
was
movies.
Huge.
Okay,
the Spider-Man movie was huge.
Yeah, and then Daredevil, Hulk. So even if you didn't like those movies, they were at least out there, right? I mean, then the Punisher, the first of the newer Punisher movies, not the one with
Punisher,
not the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, which we will get to at some point.
I look forward to that.
Spider-Man 2, X2, Blade Trinity, and Elektra all came out prior to this movie, and in the same year this movie came out, the Fantastic Four movie came out, and so like you have this.
I'll tell you right now, I'd rather watch this than watch Elektra.
Yeah, than that, and me with Daredevil, me with freaking Fantastic Four movie. Like there's so many more movies that I'd rather watch this more. But the idea is that there was at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 movies that either came out before or in the same year as this movie that had the Marvel name on it. So like there was this Marvel thing out there, and with X-Men and two of the Spider-Man movies that really did successful stuff. And the Blade trilogy is obviously pretty good. And so there's all of that. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was like, let's just see if we can do something special with this movie and do something with it.
Some attention.
It could have been better, but Avi Arad said because they decided to film it on location in Australia that he wished he kept more tabs on the film, but being in Australia was difficult and it could have been better. And so he's actually come out and said that. And that's one of those reasons why I went directly to the TV, because of the fact
Do you think Marvel tried to sort of like bury this? Do you think they were like, let's not get this out there, let's not get this known anymore? Because I mean, I have seen every Marvel movie, I think, besides this one that I'm aware of, and of course, I'd never seen the unreleased Fantastic Four, but I'd seen them all, and I never knew this movie existed.
I think because it's Man-Thing, it's here's my question. So in this is obviously 94 versus 2005, but in 94, they look at this movie like Fantastic Four and they say $1 million. It was not a good movie, but could have been released. It's one of the best Fantastic Four movies, which is so stupid to say, but it's true. And they opted to just get rid of it, and now it's just like lore.
Well, it's funny. The thing with 94 is
they learned their lesson on that. They learned their lesson on that, like where they should have just released it, and so they just like from this point on, we're at least just gonna release them, or that was the Fantastic Four, and this is Man-Thing. So like you're talking character, and the same with Nick Fury, Agent of Shield, which released 4 years later.
Drastically different.
Those two names are like people are not going to remember this. You have to look this up to actually see this and see this. Man-Thing is not available on Disney Plus and things like that. So like those are the kind of things we're like, well, we'll make it. We'll try to make back our money and see what happens. You know, maybe they made their money back on DVD sales over the years. Like maybe they made it up so far in streaming. I don't know.
It is really interesting that the Fantastic Four movie had to be made to keep rights. This didn't have to be made, and they went out and did it. Like, it was an interesting choice. But at the time, Blade's R-rated. Blade was horror related. He's killing vampires. It had a creep vibe to it. Maybe they figured this was the way they might go. Maybe they thought they were going to only really, you know, do that Marvel Knight era and gear towards adult people that are going to be into these, not try to have family-friendly movies and stuff like that. You know, not have Guardians of the Galaxy and the raccoon running around screaming at people, but instead we're going to have creatures murdering people in front of topless women.
Which was something I've said more currently is the best thing I think I love about Marvel Universe is that there's literally you can't say, I hate when people say as a generic term across all movies that have comic books in it is they're superhero movies. Like there are superhero genres and so on and so forth, but there's other things that are involved. And I just put out a review about Blue Beetle, or I don't know if it's out yet. It'll be out by this time this drops anyway, but I think I released it over the weekend.
I think you saw it. Yeah, I think I saw it.
It was a forgettable movie in the superhero genre because that movie specifically is a superhero genre movie. Like there's no question about that. That is a superhero origin story. It's telling a story about a superhero.
Sole purpose, really.
And so, but there's other movies like Ant-Man, which is a heist movie. There's Guardians of the Galaxy, which is more of a comedy. There's Thor Ragnarok, which is more of a comedy. You have your darker things like Man-Thing. There's a Man-Thing, or the Werewolf by Night, which is a horror thing. So they're doing this stuff where you're watching, you can't say superhero movies or comic book movies. They're movies that are based on comics, but they all are in their own individual genres for the most part. Even like Iron Man is more of a war movie than it is actually like, you know, like, so there's this part that goes, they were actually thinking about this back then with Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. in 1998 and with this, you know, coming out was like, we can make these other genre movies that are, Blade is honestly in that category too. Like X-Men was the first superhero movie. Blade is not, you know, in that category of superheroes as a whole.
No, not really.
But I was looking up this thing too. God, I have a freaking fly flying around here. You know, I'm like waving over here like this. In 2000, Marvel Entertainment entered a joint venture with Artisan Entertainment to turn at least 50 Marvel superhero franchises into live action films, TV series, direct-to-video films, and internet projects. Which is kind of funny how they said internet projects in 2000. I feel like that wasn't a very big thing back then. These franchises included the adaptation of Man-Thing. Plans to make a film about the character were first announced in 2001. It was variously considered for direct-to-video release or theatrical release. After the success of Blade, X-Men, M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable, because that was obviously a superhero-style movie, and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the film was moved to a theatrical release to exploit the success of superheroes. So it was done that way. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. I'm back live now.
Did I lose you?
Yeah, I lost you altogether. I don't know if that was my internet or yours, or
my
internet connection's unstable.
Mine's crappy too. So, but I was just basically saying that it was made to exploit the success of Marvel movies based on this.
Yeah, it makes sense. You know, that was kind of the gist of it, I feel like.
Yeah. But I mean,
I feel like the problem I had with this movie ultimately is that the main character is the cop, followed by the school teacher, which we can get into in a second of who she becomes. But I I didn't care about really either. I mean,
No,
specifically the cop, the main character himself, I didn't care about at all. In fact, at the beginning of it, for the first 15, 20 minutes, I'm like, is he going to get killed and become the Man-Thing? And there's another creature out here that's killing people? Because Man-Thing's more of like a hero than a villain. In this one, the Man-Thing's killing kind of anybody.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't kill the girl in the beginning, he killed the guy. So I'm like, oh, so he's only killing the oil workers. Like, okay, because the oil workers were taking over his space. But then he starts killing everybody and their brothers, kind of like whoever he comes across.
Mm-hmm.
So you sort of lose that whole like vengeance thing of it. But the cop that's your main character, I really don't care what happens to him at all.
Yes.
Like, he's dull. He's not a particularly great actor.
Well, Hollywood forgot about him too, because he really was in nothing after this movie. So Hollywood forgot about him as well.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't, based on this, it doesn't really surprise me.
You mentioned the main two characters. You mentioned, so the actor's name is Matthew La Neves, and he was Sheriff Cobb Williams. Rachel Taylor was Terry Elizabeth Richards, who was the school teacher. And Rachel Taylor then becomes in the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Netflix series. She is,
excuse me,
Trish Walker, which is her name is Patricia Trish Walker, but in the comic books, everybody knows her as Patsy Walker, and she's in Jessica Jones originally, but then moves on to the other Netflix series as well, which is kind of funny. This is actually her first feature film role. Was this
really?
Movie. The main two characters, they almost forced you to like them in a sense, or forced you to try to want to like them, because also they fell in love like really quickly. Like they were like, yeah, he's come back to me, I'm gonna lose you.
Yeah, he's carrying her off. He's like arresting her, and she hates him, and he's not from there and doesn't understand their troubles with this oil company. Followed up by, I'm in love with you, I can't lose you in my life. And it's like, how did this come about? And you fell in love with a guy who has a personality of a pet rock. Like,
I just didn't get it. And I'm thinking to myself, like, they needed to make some sort of, if he goes missing, because technically he was not attached to anyone in that town or anyone in the movie. Not a soul. So you had to make him attached to someone to care about him losing him. Yes.
Yeah. No one would have cared. They were like, oh, well, that sheriff's gone. Let's go get another one. Like,
and that's where they had to create that thing. But it's almost like they could have written in the story that like they knew each other already, like from past. And the reason why he came there and didn't realize she moved there too. And
yeah. If he was more likable, I feel like this movie would have been more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But because I flat out didn't care about him, it killed a good portion of the movie. Because your horror thing is you don't want to see the person die.
Yes.
Right? Or sometimes you really want to see that person die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This one, I didn't have a feeling either direction. I just didn't care.
You whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I'm watching it and I'm like, if the creature kills him, no big whoop really on my end. Mm-hmm. I just don't care. Or if one of these, I don't, and that was the plot of this movie was random. Mm-hmm. Like the gist, the oil company comes in and we want to stop them. Okay, easy enough. But the rest of it was just scattered and chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you had the old guy in town, and you had the school teacher, which you also don't, like, you don't get this attachment to her even. It's not like the kids love her as a teacher, and she's trying to defend their way of life or anything.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't get into any of these characters at all. It was mostly just like, hey, look, this guy got ripped apart.
I want to look. I forgot who wrote it. That's what I was going to look up. Who wrote it? It was directed by. Oh yeah, we did talk about this on off air at the shop. It was written by a guy named Hans Rodionoff, but their name on Wikipedia is not even clickable, which means that they didn't do anything else in their entire career.
This is the only thing.
But we were actually going to write the guy who directed. We did talk about that in your comic book shop. The guy who directed, his name is Brett Leonard. Which obviously directors have, like, they're not writing the actual script, but they have a lot of the control of what goes on. And so if there's something bad about a movie, it's like the whole creative team is in fault. And that would be the guy who wrote it, but also the guy who directed it. And he is known for movies like The Lawnmower Man from 1992. It's based on the Stephen King short story. And so there's that connection to Bangor, Maine, which is where we're located.
Look at that.
And it starred Pierce Brosnan in that movie.
Wow.
Hideaway, which starred Jeff Goldblum and Alicia Silverstone. That came out. These,
like, huge actors.
We talked about this one, Virtuosity, which starred Denzel Washington, Russell Crowe. So that movie came out. He directed that one as well. And
I want
then
to watch
moving,
that again. I loved that as a kid when it came out.
the funny thing is, like after this movie, and I don't know, maybe it's this movie that kind of destroyed it for. He did directed a movie, a 2005 Australian crime horror movie called Feed. That was like nothing. I didn't actually like even make any. It didn't go to theaters. It was directed a movie. But then he also directed the 5th Highlander movie, Highlander: The Source, that was made for $13 million, Paul, and in box office brought in 213,000.
Oh dear God!
And then he was in a movie that I can't click on in 2009 that's not there.
It's
Another
also
movie I
bad.
can't click on. And then he's
You can't
actually
click on the movie. It's really bad.
he actually directed a movie in 2021 called Triumph, based on the story of screenwriter Michael D. Coffey. It starred Terrence Howard, which is kind of funny because Terrence Howard was also in a Marvel movie. He was the original Rhodey.
Right.
But yeah, that was a direct. Looks like a directed movie. Yeah, 40%
I
Rotten
actually
Tomatoes.
liked him as Rhodey
Me too.
quite a bit. I would have liked to have seen him
I think
continue.
either honestly could take either way, but I to me personally, I'm just pissed off that someone was like, nah, this is not going to be much for me. And then now in 2021, Terrence Howard starred in a movie that no one knows about. So that's where I
Yeah.
laugh at it because I'm like, oh, these
Yeah.
people have turned down these Marvel roles because they're Marvel roles, and I'm like, okay, yeah, there's definitely people who have
How-
big
How'd that work?
mansions,
How'd that
and
work out for you?
you're starring in a director movie
Now,
film by a guy who made a
now I
movie
feel like
called
we're running
Man
into a
Thing.
problem in these movies where they're casting too well-known actors because
Yes.
actors and actresses want to be part of the Marvel universe, and they're in there, and I'm like, I can't unsee them from other roles, and I'd rather have lesser-known people so that way I can just accept them as that character and move on without a problem. Yeah, I feel like this. If you took this whole movie and you gave us a more interesting cast around it and a slightly more coherent plot line for why all these other people are involved in it, it wouldn't have been a bad movie, really.
I'll tell
It
you right
just
now, Paul, out of the 3 movies we've watched so far that are in this category of like, I would consider like almost
obscurity.
comic book B movies, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense. Like comic book movies that like should not have been made in a sense, but really were made. This
yeah.
is up towards the top. Like I personally might
Um,
say it would be this and then the Fantastic Four movie and then Agent of Shield if I had to give it a right off the top of
yeah.
my head order.
I, I
Um,
I think I would too. Yeah. The
because
Fantastic Four movie, the biggest thing was enjoying the
yeah,
Doctor Doom of that. Like
here's
that he was comic accurate Doctor Doom.
and fair enough, fair is fair. If even the Fantastic Four movie that was made was given $6 million, if it was given $6 million, the Fantastic Four was given a $6 million budget, would it have been the top of this list? Would it have been a better movie than these? Probably. They're given $1 million budget, gives it
Most likely.
nothing. Yeah.
I'm sure you could have improved a lot on it. On the a little some of that writing in the Fantastic Four movie is wildly incoherent too.
Yes. So,
But maybe with a little extra money we could have changed things and gotten some more ideas on what we needed to do with it. So yeah, no, I would think with a higher budget, the Fantastic Four movie probably would have could have been the top one in the list
yeah.
of your B movie stuff. Yeah, this is I don't know. I watched it.
Well, that's
So,
the thing is, like,
all
I
right,
feel like we had
so
this discussion when we've talked about, like, after you watch the Fantastic Four movie, you're like, oh my God. And then after you watch Agent of Shield, we're like, oh my God. It was more like you said about the main characters in this movie. It was more like take it or leave it. It was not like
yeah,
there was nothing in this being like, oh my God, you're gonna watch that movie, or oh my gosh, you have to watch this movie. There was like this. If you
yeah,
watch it, you check that off your box on we've watched this movie, but there's nothing in it that makes me goes, you definitely shouldn't watch it, and then you
no,
definitely should watch it. It's just
you
one of
have to
those
watch
things
it.
that like
I would I would more often not tell somebody you have to watch that Fantastic Four movie to see Doom
yes,
and at least see the costume that they did and see like how well that was presented. Then I would say you got to go see Man Thing because of whatever. Maybe if someone comes in here, which has never happened, but if someone comes in and said, I'm a huge Man Thing fan, be like, oh, have you ever seen the 2015 movie? Like, so the 2005 movie. So this was a funny one. So on the collector side of the world, they released Marvel Legend figures based off of the Netflix series, and they were all exactly live action. Um, So the Daredevil looked just like the Netflix series. The Jessica Jones looked like the actress from Jessica Jones. And then they had Blade in it, which the Blade didn't look like Wesley Snipes. I'm guessing they maybe didn't have some rights or something. And every one of them, while all the packages were black and red and looked kind of like Netflix and everything, had a Man-Thing figure piece in it. The Build-A-Figure piece was Man-Thing. And it looked so out of place, this weird green hunk in there with all these characters that were realistically designed. And every collector I talked to, I said, why the hell did they make a Man-Thing with this series? And I'm assuming they made a Man-Thing because there was a live action Man-Thing. It's the only other one at the time that was live action in this kind of off the wall area to be made. And that's why a Man-Thing figure was made. But none of the collectors that I've talked to knew why or knew this movie existed. But so there's your weird, obscure Marvel collectible side of this, is that there's a Man-Thing Build-A-Figure, and the reason why is likely because of this Man-Thing movie.
And like I said, I give it credit because, like, I mean, honestly, this is not a DC versus Marvel thing, but like as a big Marvel, zombie over here, does DC do? I mean, even back in the day, like when DC's basically made movies for DC comics, it's Batman, Superman. It's these movies that are like main characters. It's from the beginning, which is fine. We obviously need to have those tentpole films to like do this. But the fact that Marvel was probably had something to do with bankruptcy, because this is right around the time they filed for bankruptcy in the early 2000s part of their or like right around that time. That they had to sell some of these and do some of these, try to make some money. But the idea that they made an Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. movie, the idea that they made a Man-Thing movie, the idea that they made a Blade movie, these are all movies, the characters that are not your top tier character people. And the idea that they even took the risk on doing this, thinking that maybe we can weasel our way in and
if you
catch
some interest and you get some discussions and you get some people talking, then that helps create more knowledge in the Marvel universe. And let's not go out. It's smart in let's not go out and make a low budget, poorly made Captain America, low budget, poorly made Iron Man.
Well, they did that,
or Spider-Man. Yes. They did way back, but that's a whole other subject. But at this point in time, they said, let's get some of these characters that are lesser known and do it. So if it is kind of a flop and doesn't really succeed, we didn't kill and annihilate one of our major characters. We didn't make this horribly low budget version of something, a guy painted green and calling him the Hulk and throwing him out there. We went and did Man-Thing and we did Blade and all these other ones. So
I mean, cool. Like I said, as a Marvel fan, I'm happy that this has been done. Like, this is one of those cool things, and I'm happy that as much as there is, and there are people like my wife who will only ever watch something that was made in the MCU because she likes the idea that it is connected. That there's fun for us to actually have this discussion and be able to talk about these things that are a little known, and maybe if we can do my part, not that it matters to us, but maybe these characters get a little bit more residuals on the fact that someone listens to this episode and goes out and buys the DVD or buys the streaming version of it or whatever, and
go check this out
and see that out there. If you want an actual greater and better interpretation of who Man-Thing is, watch the Werewolf by Night special over on Disney Plus, because that is the best Man-Thing that's been out there on TV, and that was not even a man; it was Werewolf by Night titled.
I would love to see that they did that every Halloween release, but they all still connect to that thing, or each have like one of these.
Honestly, it could be every 2 years, it could be every 3 years. I don't care. Just do more of them. Yes,
do more of them, and do these like Fear Itself, Strange Tales, the old school Marvel horror titles, and tie them in that way, because that's fun, and you can get into like Howling Commandos and all this stuff. And it's funny because Man-Thing's origin story is very horror. And it was originally supposed to be for kids horror story type thing. The guy injects himself with this, supposed to be a soldier serum, and it was a concoction, and he crashes his car while being chased by terrorists, and he lands in the swamp, and the between the magics of the swamp and this stuff, it turns him into this thing. And then he goes out for revenge, and he's always out in the swamp protecting the swamp. Like, you have a good horror-based, good plot idea for Man-Thing, and he's a terrifying creature. I mean, if you're evil, he secretes an acid that can burn through you and all these other things. He has all this stuff that's super horror-based. But it's funny that we took all that, and we just didn't really incorporate any of it. We mentioned Ted Sallis, who is Man-Thing. But in this, apparently, he's not Man-Thing. Man-Thing is some sort of ancient guardian, or it's almost more of what Swamp Thing was in DC than really what Man-Thing is in Marvel. And instead, we're like, oh, he's this guardian of the swamp, and I don't know. We didn't go anywhere near the comics, and it's too bad because you could have just stuck with the comics really, and still had the same horror movie, and it might have been more with it and more interesting.
In the Werewolf by Night special, I'm pretty sure it was all CGI, right? There was no,
I think so, and they did a good job in that too. That they didn't show that was another one. They didn't show tons of Man Thing.
No, I was just trying to figure out.
He came
Carrie
out
Jones. Oh, yeah.
from the moss, and he went back in and stuff, and he sort of was like.
Carrie Jones is a guy who provides the motion capture for Swamp Thing creature. I was just thinking to myself, so the guy who played the practical effects in the suit person on Man Thing from 2005 is Conan Stevens, who was on Game of Thrones. He was what's his name? I get a tickle in my throat. He was crap, I just had it. He was on Game of Thrones. He was. Come on. Really? You don't. You don't think I would just be able to get right away what he was?
Right back there.
Like you don't think that like it would just write it because he's like what he's known for. One of the things he's known for. He was the Mountain. He was the Mountain.
So that was gonna be my guess, but I thought that the Mountain was a different actor, so I guess I didn't know.
It was the Mountain, so it was kind of cool to see that
series.
too. So this is one of his first in theater kind of.
He must be a huge guy.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's kind of cool connection. And they went on to. I mean, obviously Rachel Taylor went on to bigger things and better things. Rachel Taylor, and honestly, the other people, Jack Thompson, a couple of the other people that were in the movie, actually went on to do things that like people would actually probably recognize them from these shows, like Hawaii Five-0 and things like that. But like Conan went on to do Game of Thrones at some point. Obviously, he did other stuff too. He's been in. He was in The Hobbit. He was the keeper of the dungeons in the Hobbit movies and stuff like that. But he also was in Game of Thrones. And then obviously like Rachel Taylor went on to do Jessica Jones and all that stuff. And she's also been in other things like Transformers and so on. So she's actually got some actual clout to her name, not just for being a Man Thing.
Well, she was great as Patsy Walker.
Yes.
Or Trish Walker. She was great.
Trish Walker, yeah.
Like I could see them doing a Hellcat series.
Yes.
And go around that without a problem. She was great in that. This was, I don't know. The acting was not great. You had weird fake Southern accents that also seemed to come and go based on when we were filming, if we added it or not. And the villain was like, he's just a bad guy. There he is. He's putting an oil in a swamp. He's bad. Like
the fact that you say the villain, and I watched this last weekend, so it was about a week ago, but like you said that villain, and honestly, the fact that you said that, it was like, oh yeah, there was a villain. Like that's the level of the villainness of that. Yeah. There was someone they were fighting against. But like
the ridiculous scene of him and his son sitting in the truck laughing was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So this like maniacal laughter that they were gonna get him tonight, or we're gonna kill him tonight, son, or whatever the hell it was. Like I don't even remember, but it was just not good. Like each one of these things, if we'd had the villain was more, you wanted to see him get it.
Yeah.
If the cop was more interesting, you wanted to see him survive. Any of these things would have made this a better movie and a better horror and more suspenseful. And instead, I'm just like, I don't give a crap. I don't really care if this guy gets killed in the long run. I don't really care if the cop survives this. None of it. Like they had no build up to any of these characters to matter.
And yeah. And the funny thing is, like you mentioned, we mentioned a little bit about forgettable. I don't think I'll watch this ever again. I don't think that there's a need. Yeah. I actually probably will sit down with other people in the future. And again, this is not saying, I do think this had like this 1A, 1B on the 3 films we were talking about, the B movie style Marvel movies, is that this is that 1A, 1B with Fantastic Four. But the Fantastic Four, I think, is rewatchable in the sole point of view of, oh my gosh, your buddy Don hasn't seen it, so you sit down with Don and watch this movie.
Yeah, you got to come see this thing.
So on and so forth. When my son gets older, let's watch this movie that never was released. I mean, if Daniel had extra time when he was in town, he was like, I'm interested in watching this thing. We could have like gone to Queen City and watched it or something like that. Like that kind of thing.
Put it on the big screen.
But other than that, I don't think there's any reason for me to watch this again. Same thing with Nick Fury.
I would almost say we go into like watching more of these in a year from now, 2 years from now. We go back and say, put them on your list. I'm probably gonna forget I watched this thing,
and you probably just put it on the list. And then the other ones, other movies you might talk about in the future, you might watch again. to see where it lands. So this one might just be like, okay, I'm just gonna throw it on somewhere, because again, I feel like there's like take it or leave it kind of film. Would you agree with me in the idea that, I mean, the idea that could be put in as a half star, but probably more like a 1 star, because again, it was watchable. There was some positive elements to it. It wasn't as bad as it could be. I put Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a half star, honestly, but it could be in that 1 star too. I think a lot of these are just like, they just didn't know what they were doing. And I think that's part of the fault. And that's not their fault in a sense. Like, they just didn't know what they had yet, I think. I think it was one of those things that a comic book movie wasn't a proven entity yet at that point. Even a movie that comes out 2 years ago. I mean, Iron Man wasn't a proven entity until 3 or 4 years later, when they realized that Iron Man kicked off other movies. And they say that because The Incredible Hulk came out 2 or 3 months later, and that movie didn't do nearly as well. And so like Iron Man wasn't like this, like in October of that year, like a couple months later, they were like, oh my gosh, we have a gold mine. It wasn't until like the first arc of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies came out, where they're like, okay, Iron Man, thank you for doing this, so on and so forth. So in the time that the early 2000s, when they're making the X-Men and Blade and all that stuff, I don't think they even knew what they had until later on. So there's one of those things, you can't say that they knew what they were doing with this movie. I honestly don't think they knew what they were doing. And Avi Arad, probably had so much stuff going on, and not having like the mindset of making these movies that are going to make a bunch of money
having this being done in Australia, when I'm sure he had stuff he had to do and keep track of in the US and everything else, I'm sure didn't add for any of this. Yeah. But
to add on to that, but the last thing with that is the fact that that's why I don't blame the Fantastic Four movie. Like, I don't blame the Fantastic Four movie at all, because the fact that they had $1 million, they had to make it, yada, yada, yada. Same thing with this. I don't think they knew what they had, and they had to make it. So
here's another one for the Fantastic Four. I can tell you that somewhere somebody looked through a Fantastic Four comic.
Yes.
They had read it. They had, like, this movie, you could have asked, somebody could have said, hey, here's the deal. We got a character, he's from the swamp, and he kills people, and he has red eyes, and they're like, okay, and took off with it without ever reading anything about Man-Thing. Like, this didn't have any of that comic connection, where you could see the Fantastic Four at least tried to follow along into the characters of the Fantastic Four. Like,
we're going to talk in the future, the 1990 Captain America movie, which Captain America is a lawyer. So there's that. Yeah, so I feel like what Fantastic Four is in connection to, if you put it in groups of things that connect to the Marvel comic book universes to the movies, at least Fantastic Four goes into that. They could be in the same exact pool of movies as the MCU, because they do have at least some sort of connection to characters that are in the comics. Whereas the Man-Thing, I think, slides into that realm of the early Captain America movies, where it's like, we're going to use the name, and that's it.
Because the name will get people to come watch it. But
whatever story we want to watch, we're not going to read a single comic book. Probably people did it on purpose. They probably like, don't read a comic book, because the fact that we don't want to connect too much. And I think that's what they realized, that at this moment, looking back on it, that they needed to do, and that might have actually made this movie more relevant, is that they actually said, let's give it an origin story. Let's do this thing. And who knows? They could have just not given a crap. It could have just been like, oh yeah, we're making that movie. I forgot about that. It's in Australia. Who knows?
Go get that done.
We're 18 years later.
You know what's funny is, watching this though made me want a Man-Thing movie.
Yeah,
rereading Man-Thing's origin. I've only ever read one Man-Thing trade. I read R.L. Stine's Man-Thing trade, but reading his origin story made me go, this would make a really good Marvel Man-Thing. You definitely had that horror stuff in it. Like, you could do a really good PG-13 Marvel horror movie around Man-Thing.
And I love the idea of Disney Plus. So I actually don't even have a problem with it being like not a Disney Plus special like it was for Werewolf by Night, but if it was like a 2-part special, where like it was 2 weeks apart. So like you did one on a Wednesday night this week, and then next week you did the final, and you have 2 different things. It's like 2.5-hour things. So it makes it like a 3-hour movie. We can get into and it's like a prequel to the one that we saw with Werewolf by Night. So like, obviously we know Man-Thing in that movie, but you get a prequel with this thing, and it could come out next October. Like, it could be like or it could be black and white. It could be whatever you wanted to do with it. I love the idea that you can mess around with it.
Into his origin and how Ted became the Man-Thing, and him for his revenge, and these people hunting him at the end of it, and him trying to hide in the swamps and stuff, and then where he ends up meeting up with the werewolf.
You could call it Adventures into Fear.
Right. I mean,
you could do a whole series, honestly. Just call the stuff Adventures into Fear. And then just call and do all these different things that are horror related, and just use that as your title, because that was the comic books that came out in the 70s and in 80s. That would be cool to do that. And And it makes me want to go back and rewatch Werewolf by Night because of the fact that Man Thing was pretty cool in that movie and was that hero on that you talked about, that he's not more of it's a scary creature, but he's more of a hero than he is a villain. And that aspect is not really portrayed in this movie, but it is in Werewolf by Night. So rewatch that. And then listen to episode number 62 with me and Jabron talking about the special. Shameless plug. But yes, that came out last October, and then Jabron and I discussed it on the podcast after that. Who owns the Briar Patch, Jabron, and talked about that on episode 62 on that. But yeah, I mean, so like I said, it was worth watching. It was worth putting in this. You're a comic book store owner. If someone does bring it up to you now you know about it. Same thing with the Unreleased Fantastic Four movie and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's a fun conversational piece, I guess, for us as comic book fans. I think that's the big check mark for us, is the fact that now we have this in our brains to think back on again, and then also look at other movies that we thought were absolute crap and go, well, there was something that was worse than this. So we have that. Like, we go back to watch Elektra and Daredevil and stuff like that, they're still going to be crap for us. But my point would be is like, there's going to be a point where we're like, at least there was a budget, and that's the difference. I think sometimes with this whole stuff is at least there was a budget, at least there was some things that make sense.
This would be an interesting one, is to go back now and go, was Man Thing better than Elektra?
We'll find that out, because we are going to watch Elektra at some point in the next little while here, because we're going to, I don't know if we should do, should we do that? We'll talk about that. Next up, actually, for us, is more of a larger budget character and larger budget movie, because the Marvels is coming out this fall. Yes. So Paul and I will watch Captain Marvel and discuss that one. So that will be a first for us, where it's like, in a sense that we're going to be able to, like, this movie is not extremely well received, a bunch of MCU fans and things like that. Like, it's like one of those ones that, like, some people don't rewatch it in their whole rewatch categories of things. So like, I think it's gonna be nice. We're going to be able to pick this one apart a little bit, but as well, like, it's also going to have much better rating than 1 star, in my opinion.
I have my issues with that, so it will be fun to discuss.
It'll be fun to discuss. And then after that, we'll follow that up potentially. So there's rumors out there that Aquaman will be delayed. These are just like initial rumors out there, because this writer's strike and the actor's strike, that movies like Aquaman needs to make money. I mean, they were the first Marvel or a DC movie to make $1 billion, the first movie. And so like, this needs to make money. It's gone through so many reshoots and so many rewrites that they're like talking about the idea that the strike goes until January. This movie's supposed to come out in December. The actors are not going to walk the red carpet, the premiere, all that stuff. So there's a possibility that it shifts into 2024 solely, even if it's done, even if they're not doing any more rewrites or anything like that, solely to get that in there. If that's the case, Paul, we will not watch Aquaman in December like it was originally planned, and we'll slide Howard the Duck into that category. That one right there. We'll do that instead. Just because I feel like it's fun to, maybe one of these things is right after that, in the first of the new year, or right around the new year part, is Daredevil Born Again's coming out somewhere in there, and which is the new series on Netflix. And so obviously the right thing to do would be to watch the Daredevil series from Netflix, because of this new kind of continuation into Disney Plus's version of Daredevil.
The continuation, not continuation.
However, when have we ever done things right here? So we're gonna watch Daredevil.
Here comes Ben Affleck, baby.
But I was thinking to myself as well, I mean, Elektra's not going to be in this, but it might just make sense for us to watch both those movies and talk about them together. But maybe not. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time. But let's see here. He froze on me again. Getting close to the end here, and he's freezing on me. Are you there?
You're back again. I lost you again.
That's okay. I'm leaving all out. Normally I edit this stuff out, but I'm going to leave it all in there because we're going to finish up here. So it's also easier for me not to edit it now. The funny thing is, Paul and I are like 10 minutes from each other too. That's the best part about this. We could literally be in the same room.
If this is going to be the internet problems, we probably should just meet up, because
I do. Oh, well, let me see. So let me quickly see this. Captain Marvel. Okay. It came out in 2019, which would be the newer, older movies, because we usually would watch or review something that's like just came out. Whereas this is not just came out, but it's still the newest movie that already came out kind of thing we're going to watch. That movie is 2 hours, so that's probably too long. Howard the Duck film. Howard the Duck is an hour 50 minutes. I mean, so we'll talk. Well, the next movie that's
Howard
right
the
around
Duck is a long movie.
The next movie that's an hour and a half to hour and 50 minutes time, we can discuss about the idea of doing it in the same spot and do what we want to do with this movie, which I'm kind of glad we didn't, because I don't know, it wouldn't have been much to talk about, honestly. I feel like the movie was so not boring, but boring in a sense that it would have been like, whatever. But Howard the Duck might be one of those ones, or like the Captain America movie from 1990 might be one of those ones where we decide to do it live. And that would be kind of a fun one. We could actually do. We don't charge for it, and we don't charge for drinks. We could potentially do it at the book space and do it live, actually show the thing.
Right.
We could show it and then do a live recording afterwards of a smaller half an hour, 40-minute review of it and take questions from the, just show it straight up with the actual volume on, and then be fun. Who's gonna come after me? Marvel gonna come after me? For watching. We're streaming it live for free. It's a free movie.
Because you showed that movie and they're like, we don't want that shit remembered. Don't be showing that.
We could do it at the book space. I mean, Jerome would probably love that, is to do a live showing of the 1990 Captain America movie.
We're suing you because Chris Evans is Captain America and nowhere else.
Actually, we could do that at Queen City, instead. We'll go talk with Josh. Josh would probably be down for that. If we do it for free. Actually, with Queen City, we couldn't do it because he charges for food. So we'd have to do it. Oh my God, it was made for $3 million, Paul.
They spent $3 million on that?
Yeah. So it was 97 minutes. That one would actually probably be the next one we do. It might be next summer, but it's still.
Oh, dear God.
We'll do that
Where
one.
Where the hell did
with time to plan?
Where did $3 million go for this movie?
Someone's pocket.
Gasoline for that motorcycle he was riding constantly.
You ready for this? The 1990 Captain America movie was released on VHS, if that says anything. Okay, so
I remember renting it.
So is Howard the Duck. But yeah, so we'll get into some more reviews in the future here. Some of them, like I said, some of them will fit that category of what I'm going to call Marvel B movies, in the sense that they're not the highest quality. So like Captain America would fit in that. Sadly, Howard the Duck would fit in that, which is really crazy because it was a feature film that was made for a lot of money by some big people, and it is in that category. And so that one's the one where it's almost silly, whereas things like Daredevil and Elektra was like, it can't be silly because it was taken too seriously.
It was taken very seriously, yeah.
And so, but we'll get into some more. It'll be fun. I think we will potentially have to do at some point after we get 5 or 6 of these done. We'll do some sort of rankings on how these movies. And like I said, I think maybe we'll keep things like Captain Marvel out of them. But if we do these obscure comic book movies that we watch that fall into this category,
the B-rated category.
It has to be rated under 2 stars or something like that to be in this category, and just the best of the worst Marvel movies. Does that make any sense?
I mean, we're going to have to watch the other Fantastic Four movies.
They might be in this. This is so crappy.
Yeah, I mean, I am sure the latest Fantastic Four movie will definitely be in that category.
It's on our list, Paul, because the fact that I have it tentatively put out until whenever because of when the movie's coming out. But we all have things just to give everybody a little preview before we sign off this thing. Like Deadpool movies, when the Deadpool movie comes out, we have Daredevil. I mentioned that one. Captain America 1990 movie. The Captain America movies, the newer ones, we'll do that one. Probably we'll watch them all and then just talk about them all as a whole thing. Those will be out around the time the Captain America movie comes out next summer. We're going to watch Steel with Shaquille O'Neal.
Shaquille O'Neal. Oh, God.
And then I thought we'd do things like Joker before the new Joker movie comes out, doing Christmas and holiday things. We've talked about doing Nightmare Before Christmas because that's a cult classic. It's not a super comic book movie, but it's just that thing.
We sell both manga and figures and Funko Pops and stuff of Nightmare Before Christmas in the shop because it's so closely comic related. Yes. It's right in the wheelhouse.
I called an audible this morning saying that if Aquaman gets delayed, we're going to do Howard the Duck. I'm calling an audible one more time because if we do that, let's save Howard the Duck and we'll get to that. But really, because of Christmas, it's holiday season. Might as well do a holiday movie. We'll watch Batman Returns for that one. So we'll do that one in December if Aquaman comes back. And then we'll get into Blade trilogies for the Blade movie and the Fantastic Four movies before the Fantastic Four movie, Superman the movie, for the new Superman. So we'll get into these ones that are there's some that are, like I said, they're adjacent, but they're not the Superman movie, the movie, Superman the movie.
Yeah,
it's not connected to the Superman Legacy movie that James Gunn is working on, but it's fun to watch that instead of watching Man of Steel because that doesn't it's not. Yeah. I'd rather watch the older ones.
Okay, Man of Steel's not a great movie for me. It's not a horrible movie. What the hell was the other one? Superman Returns, right?
Yes.
The Superman Returns. That was a horrible movie.
It was, but it's not the old the original Superman movies. If you talk about it, I say original. There is some other ones that'd be fun to talk about. So it's okay. And then Paul and I will get to get preview guys, get prepared, subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff because Paul and I will be back at the end of the year too. So you get a couple more times with Paul to talk about movies and things like that. And maybe he'll be on to talk about his comics, but maybe we'll save that for that one at the end of the year. And there might be something special with that one. We're trying to work out with that one to do our comics of the year again, which was a pretty big hit last year. And I liked it a lot. And honestly, this year, I think you and I have talked a lot more throughout the year. I think we're reading a lot more stuff that comes out this year than we have in the past, and which is pretty cool. So I think that's a difference in
I think I'm much more
years.
up to date than I usually am. And now I'm trying to read 1964, because I'm reading all of the Amazing Spider-Man right from the beginning. And while I'm reading 1964, I'm reading like brand new released this week books at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm on both ends of the spectrum. But I think it's fun doing, like, having book club is getting me reading more up to date at the same time as reading past stuff that I've missed or whatever. So,
and some of that stuff we read in book club will make it, some of it won't. But like, you know what? Nope. It's something new, so it's pretty cool. And I think that, like I said, there's something special. I'm hoping will be kind of cool. It'll be more special for people, some people than others, but who cares? We'll figure it out and we'll do that. But yeah. So I think we're giving it a 1 star, people.
Yeah,
1 star, 1 star.
We should do. I almost feel like I don't want to say this, but like, don't waste your time watching it. Like at the same time, like it's just not.
Here. Save money. Watch it with about 6 of your friends. 6 of your friends, so that one person has to buy it on digital, and then you split the cost. Maybe someone buys the beer, someone buys the nachos, and then you just spread the cost out.
You know, here we are in the morning, and I got my coffee. This was one we could have reviewed at night with a few beers, and probably would have.
It would have been awful, Paul. But yeah, so Man Thing came out in 2005. It was a Marvel movie, technically. Really had nothing to do with Marvel, but yeah, so check that out. It's a bit, like I said, I think it's available on Amazon, and actually on Amazon, it's actually kind of funny. We talked about ratings. It's a 3.8 out of 5 with user ratings on Man Thing on Amazon.
Who the hell is rating it that high?
I don't know. That takes up being what, 7.6 out of 10 if you do the extrapolation on that.
Yeah.
Like, that's higher than some other movies that are out there on the market. But I don't know if that's Amazon.
Who the hell is rating this movie that high?
That's Amazon reviews. I don't know. So
the catch is the only ones that have been sold on Amazon were the people who actually were in the movie.
Yes.
And they gave themselves
it was like 400 reviews. 398 reviews. I don't know. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know.
How does that many people? I didn't even know this movie existed.
So someone had to rate it 5 stars for it to get up that high. That's the point. Like, not everybody rating it 4 stars would not do it, because there's enough people out there rating it 1 star. So someone out there had to rate it 5 stars.
That's going to be a diehard Man Thing fan who just wants people to know there was a Man Thing. Like, it has to get out in the world. People have got to see that Man Thing existed in the comic movie community.
Yeah,
because
3.8. And
if you're a Marvel fan, if you're just a Marvel fan, you're not rating this movie that high. If you're a comic fan, or that. If you're a horror movie fan, you're not rating this movie that high.
I can't read the reviews.
None of them are gonna give this movie that kind of rating.
So, Paul, out of the ratings, before we finish this up with a stat right here, ready? 3.8 out of 5 stars out of 339 global ratings on Amazon. We should probably start doing this as part of our segment. Like, what does Amazon review people say? Out of the stars, they give you a percentage of each one. 10% gave it a 1 star, and 10% gave it a 2 star. So we're in that category down there. We're the 10%.
We're actually in the like lower percentile.
Yes. 17% gave it 3 stars, and 17% gave it 4 stars. 46% gave it a 5-star rating.
What? Did they watch a different movie?
Should we? We're going to add this. We're going to finish up with this. We're going to add some of this.
Do we need to buy the Amazon copy? Is it better?
Okay, so here we go. We're going to do a couple of Amazon reviews. We're going to add this to the cat thing. We'll do 2 5 stars and 2 1-star reviews as a sign off of this one. Okay. One of them is a person's title of the review with 5 stars. Big fan. Love this movie. That's the review. It's verified purchase too, which means they actually did buy it and watch it.
They did buy it, and we presume they watched it. Well, I wondered, did it get 5 stars because it was shipped well or something?
So love this movie. And that was August 22nd of 2022. So that's someone who watched it within the same area that we did a year ago. But this person, the next one, it says Marvel rocks, 5 stars. Again, this is probably just someone who's more of a Marvel zombie than I am. September 12th, 2014. So this is only 9 years after the movie made. This is about halfway between then and now. So the special effects might have been okay to some people. I'm a big Marvel fan. When I saw this movie for sale, I freaked out. I tried to get the movie at Best Buy, and they said it's no longer available. Here it is, all in nice shape, and it's a good movie, unless you're a hating on Marvel. So this is definitely someone who gave it 5 stars.
So this is someone who's a bigger Marvel freakazoid than you are, which is impressive.
Okay, one more 5-star, and then we'll get to a couple of two stars, and we'll sign off. I knew it wasn't going to be the best picture, but it kept my attention. I wanted to see Alex McLaughlin or McLaughlin, and I did. I'm glad that I have it on DVD now, so I can watch it again. Okay, no, that's definitely not the truth. You don't want to watch it again. 1 star.
Oh.
Well, here we go. Was not described very well. I had to return it. Would not play. That's not. The case is broken. Seriously, all the bad 1-star reviews aren't even. The 1-star reviews aren't. It's for the actual DVD. Damn okay, here you go. Here's a good one. This is the one that's relatable. 1-star review. Verified purchase. Worst adaptation of a Marvel character ever. Garbage quality. Makes Howard the Duck seem interesting.
Wow.
Okay,
that's more harsh than we were.
1-star review. Title of the review. 1 star. Waste of time. Nowhere near as good as the comic book. Just plain bad. And the last one, I want to do one more.
None of that is inaccurate at all.
There you go. This is a good one. Just for the title. I haven't read the actual review yet, but 1-star review. More like man crap is the title of the review. This movie sucked. Seriously, it's so bad. I regret streaming it on Hulu. So at this point, it must have been available on Hulu. I will never get that time back. I know this is a B movie and all B movie and all, and I expected nothing more, but this is crap. The movie should have been buried under movies that totally sucked. Now there's a hashtag movies that totally sucked. Marvel is not perfect. So there we go. That's good. That's
good. I like man crap. Man crap.
Like man crap. So I think that's a great segment to start adding to this because Amazon reviews are some of the stupidest and funniest like things that are out there.
Oh my
I think
God.
This is a new good segment.
Galactic Comics. Hello.
But I think what we'll do is we're going to sign off here. But I think what we'll do is next time we come on for Captain Marvel, we'll start with adding in some of the 5-star and 1-star reviews. Maybe we'll just do 1 star. Forget the 5-star because we don't care about that. 1-star reviews of at least Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I believe we can get those. Anything we can get on there, we'll start reading those as well. So maybe we'll throw a few in there from other movies that we've already done as a catch up on these things. But I think that'd be a funny thing because I bet 1-star reviews for Captain Marvel would be fun to read too. I think that'd be a lot on there.
Yeah,
too.
Sure.
But yeah, Galactic Comics is available at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. They're on Facebook.
Yes,
they're on Instagram. They're out there in the wild. They're at 547 Hammond Street in Bangor, Maine. If you are in the Bangor area, if not, get in touch with Paul via Facebook Messenger or whatever, call, email, and he'll
whatever it takes.
So we do that. We do a book club every month that Paul, curates with some people from our book club. We have 15, 20 members right now that join every Tuesday, last Tuesday of the month. And if you want to join that and read along, you're more than welcome to. We don't you can't zoom in or anything like that right now, but you can at least join and read along with us.
And I'm doing a better job of getting all of our previous and upcoming trades on the website. So if you want to order from the website, to get the current trades that we're reading, they're going to be on there. So, and coming soon, you may be lucky enough to get one with an autographed book plate from Galactic Comics from the creators.
Yeah, so we're working on that too. So this is going to come out in September. So September's book is A Legacy of Violence by Cullen Bunn over there at Mad Cave Studios. And so check that one out. That's cool out there too. We're reading that and we'll be reviewing that the month. And then I think, is it Frontiersmen for October?
Yes. Our friend Ryan from Diversified Inc. won the raffle and chose Frontiersmen. So we'll be doing that.
We'll do that. And we'll look at other ones. I almost guarantee I know what next Christmas's book's going to be. The Deviant from James Tynion and Ford. It's a series. I didn't know if it was going to be ongoing or limited. It's a limited series. It is multiple issues, so it can be a trade. And you don't think they're going to have it ready for next Christmas? Come on.
I'm sure they will. Yeah, I'm sure they will.
We have to do that. I mean, come on.
Yep.
So, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. I tortured you again one more time. Every time I'm going to torture
thanks,
you.
Justin. I can't wait for our ongoing movie lists because they just keep getting better and better.
The best part about this is I think that we're watching movies. Most of the movies we're watching that we know are bad. So I don't feel bad, you and I, dishing back and forth and shitting on the movie. It's one of those ones that if I get to the point where I'm watching a movie that I know someone really, really likes and I start crapping on it, I kind of feel bad. But in the same sense, no one out there should have any right in their mind, any of the movies we reviewed so far on this B movie list, that you should like. There's just no reason you should like them. So.
You're going to crap all over my childhood if you're crapping on Batman Returns.
I don't think I would. Christmas. I do think it's not as good as Batman, but who knows? We'll get there.
This will be a fun discussion. I can't wait to watch it again. I mean, I've only seen it 1.5 million times.
And what we'll end up having, you'll have to watch Batman to watch Batman. Like, you don't have to you'll have to
yeah.
So I don't think we'll chalk Batman, but we'll at least have that preface to it, to have that little bit of like I'll watch it again kind of thing. But cool.
Yeah.
But and thank you so much. I'll see you on Wednesday, or probably Tuesday and Wednesday and probably Thursday. No, I have a dinner on Thursday, so I won't be there Thursday.
Just here every night. It's fine.
I'm the person that's there the most who doesn't get paid to be there. No. But I appreciate it. And until next time, that's Paul Eaton, guys. And visit galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. Find him on social media. But yeah, that's been another movie review. 1-star rating for Man Crap 2005.
Man Crap.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Justin.